All right, college football and stuff here. It is week 5 of the 2021 college football season. I'll be covering my picks against the spread for this week in this video. Okay, starting off a Thursday night game, Virginia at Miami. Miami a 5.5-point favorite. And I decided to talk about this game because I really don't know what to think here. I was high on Miami to start the season, and they have not looked great. They've really struggled to score points, especially against decent teams. I don't think Virginia has a great defense, though, so there's certainly an opportunity for Miami to score some points there. Virginia has been basically a completely one-dimensional team on offense as well. They have a really, really good passing game, but basically nothing running the ball. So I think this could be an interesting matchup. Manny Diaz is a good defensive coach. Can their secondary stop Virginia? That's going to be the big question in this game, in my opinion. If Miami can get some turnovers, if they can slow down that passing game, Virginia does not have an answer. They cannot run the ball. They will not be able to score points if Miami can do that. But if they can't, Virginia could put up a ton of points. So I really, really don't know what to think about this game. Miami is going to have to score points. Of course, you always have to score points to win a game, but I think getting some points is going to be critical in this game for Miami. They cannot be held to 17 or 20 like they have in a few games to have any chance of winning. They're going to need to be able to move the ball. I think Miami is going to have to get at least one turnover, if not a couple of turnovers, steal some possessions from Virginia, take advantage of the fact that they're going to be throwing the ball all over the place, dare them to run it because you basically don't have to worry about the run. Play the game that LSU played against Mississippi State last week. Put nobody in the box, drop all your guys into coverage, make them beat you passing the ball, and hope you can get some picks. I don't know if I trust Miami, though. I want to trust Miami. I want Miami to win this game. I want them to cover. Miami needs to be able to beat teams like Virginia if they're going to have a chance of saving this season. I know it's not going to be the season that Miami fans hope for preseason, but if they lose here, it's really, really not going to be that kind of season. I'm a little bit worried that Virginia can score points in this game. I've picked Miami in the past. I picked them plus the points. No, I picked them to cover against Michigan State because they were the favorite in that game. It's a Thursday night game. It's less time to prepare. Now Miami played a nobody last week. They probably didn't have to do much game prep. They were maybe able to prep a little bit extra for this Virginia game, but I don't know. Their starting quarterback was out in that game. I don't know how healthy he is on De'Aaron King. I want Miami to win. I will be very, very happy if Miami wins. I'm going to take Virginia plus the 5.5, though. I think they have the ability to score points, and I don't know if Miami can get it done. So I'm taking Virginia plus the 5.5. I'm taking that as my pick, but I hope that doesn't happen. Moving on to Saturday, a couple of really big SEC games. I'm going to talk about 3 of them, but really pretty much every SEC game being played this weekend is important for determining what this pecking order is going to be. some of the good games. I'm not talking about the uh, Tennessee Missouri game. I think will be a fun game to watch, uh, and will really tell us a lot about where those two teams are. Kentucky, Florida, another game I'm not going to talk about. I think um, will have a big impact on the East and sort of figuring out how good Kentucky really is this year. And then Texas A&M, Mississippi State, another game that preseason you probably would have assumed that that's a blowout for Texas A&M, and Mississippi State could have a shot in that game. So I think those are going to be some really interesting games that are going to tell us a lot about what the SEC is really going to look like this year. Because I don't think we really know that much yet outside of Alabama and Georgia are two really, really good teams. So speaking of Georgia, first up, Saturday, Arkansas at Georgia. Georgia, an 18.5-point favorite. I think this will be an interesting game to watch. Two really good defenses. Now, Georgia's defense is better. Georgia might have the best defense in the country. I think points are going to be hard to come by in this game. Now, I say that with a little bit of a caveat. Arkansas is going to need to find a way to extend drives and eat up some clock and make sure Georgia doesn't get too many possessions. I think that's going to be a really, really big thing for Arkansas. Now, the bad thing there is like most of Arkansas's scoring against Texas A&M came on busted coverage plays or bad tackling. Um, that's not going to happen against this Georgia team. You're not going to get easy touchdowns against them. And Arkansas had a bunch of 3-and-outs, especially after KJ Jefferson went out of that game with an injury. I think that could be really tough for Arkansas here. How healthy is he? I I'm assuming that he's going to play because this is a big game, but I don't think he's going to be the run threat that he has been in previous games this season, and I think that really hurts Arkansas's offense here. If Arkansas has a bunch of 3-and-outs, if they give Georgia a bunch of extra possessions, this is a blowout. I think that's why we see the line where it is. I think Vegas is thinking, yeah, Arkansas has a good defense. I don't think Georgia is going to come out and score 30 points in the first half. But if you see a game where Arkansas struggles on offense, which I think they're going to struggle because I think pretty much every team is going to struggle to score points against this Georgia defense. But if Arkansas can't at least extend drives and limit the number of possessions that Georgia has, eventually Arkansas's defense is going to break and Georgia's going to get some points. Now, that said, I'm going to take Arkansas plus the 18.5 here. I think they're going to get just enough to keep it under that number, but I am not confident in that pick. And really, if you're interested in this game, I think this would be a fun game to watch. I think Georgia's going to get the win. I think it's going to be a decently comfortable win for them. But this could be a really, really rough game for Arkansas if they give Georgia too many possessions on offense. Georgia could make this another big blowout. And if that happens, if Georgia wins this game huge and you see Alabama play Ole Miss close, Georgia's going to be the number one team in the country next week. I think Georgia gets the win. I don't really think Arkansas has the team to beat Georgia this year, especially being at Georgia. I think Arkansas is a good team. They're way better than a lot of people thought they were going to be. If you go back to my preseason video, I said Arkansas was a team to watch, and I said that they would give Texas and Texas A&M a tough game, and they won both of those games. I think they get the loss here, though. Give me Arkansas plus the points, though, hoping that it's something more like a 14-point game, but don't be surprised if this line is that high. There's a good reason, and Georgia could very well cover this if Arkansas gives them too many possessions. Next up, Cincinnati at Notre Dame. Cincinnati, a 2-point favorite at Notre Dame. This is a huge game for both of these teams. Cincinnati really, really wants a win against a top 10 team. This is the game that makes their resume this year. If they win this game, I don't think they have many other tough games. And if they go undefeated, they are in the playoffs this year. It's happening, especially with how some of these other big teams have struggled, and undefeated Cincinnati is in the playoffs this year. So Notre Dame also really wants a chance of being back in the playoffs. I don't think they're as good of a team as they were last year. I don't think they're a playoff caliber team, at least not how I've seen them so far. But I think they've got a good enough resume and a good argument for being in the playoffs if they go undefeated, especially with a win over a good Cincinnati team if they get it. Now, my big issue with Notre Dame is they have been surviving off of turnovers. All the games that they're winning, that they're looking good in, like this Wisconsin game last week, they had that game lost until they got 3 or 4 turnovers at the end of the game. It was a 13-10 game. It was not a great looking game by Wisconsin, but if Wisconsin doesn't fumble and give Notre Dame that score and go down and then have to throw the ball like they were to try to come back, I don't think Notre Dame gets those picks. I think Wisconsin wins that game in a really rough, nasty-looking game, but turnovers were what won that game for Notre Dame and made the final score look way, way better of a win for Notre Dame than it really was. Now, I don't think Cincinnati has quite as good of a defense as Wisconsin does. I think Notre Dame will be able to do a little bit more offensively than they were able to against Wisconsin. The big thing is here, turnovers like that are not a consistent way of winning games. You cannot rely on getting turnovers. I think Notre Dame needs turnovers in this game. I think that's going to be the difference. I think this is very similar in that way to the Virginia-Miami game, where Miami is going to need turnovers to win that game. I think Notre Dame needs turnovers to win this game against Cincinnati. That's going to be the key to the game. That's the stat to look at. If Cincinnati wins the turnover battle in this game, I think Cincinnati wins. If Notre Dame wins it, I think they win. I think whoever is able to hold on to the ball better, and really, I don't think Cincinnati needs turnovers to win. I think they need to avoid turnovers on their side. So it's if Notre Dame can get some fumbles, can get an interception or two, that's the key for them winning. I'm going to take Cincinnati. They're coming off a bye. Notre Dame played a rough game against Wisconsin last week. That is a very, very physical game. I think Cincinnati is the fresher team. I think that bye week, plus probably how big of a beating physically Notre Dame took last week, is going to be the difference in this game. It's only a 2-point spread, so I think Cincinnati wins. I think they cover. Give me Cincinnati minus the 2 points. Okay, Ole Miss at Alabama. Alabama, a 14.5-point favorite. I think that point spread, similar to the Georgia-Arkansas game, surprised a lot of people because this was a super close game last year. This was Alabama's big season test last year. Ole Miss almost beat them, put up a ton of yards on that Alabama defense. Now, Alabama also in that game scored on essentially every possession. I think the stat is Alabama got all but 41 of the possible yards they could have gotten in that game. It's like they punted from the 40-yard line once, and they got a turnover on downs on the 1-yard line. So other than that, they got every single possible yard they could, which is as close to playing against no defense as you can get, essentially. I don't think that's going to be the case this year. I think Ole Miss defense is better than they were last year, and I don't think Alabama's offense is quite as good. Now, the big question here is, can a former Saban assistant finally get a win against Nick Saban? I don't know. I think if anyone's going to do it, Lane Kiffin has a really good shot at being the one who does it. I don't know if this is the year, though. I think Ole Miss caught Alabama by surprise a little bit last year. It was on the road at Ole Miss. People weren't expecting very much from them. And I think they sort of got caught by surprise. Two big things for this game. Ole Miss is coming off of a bye, and Kiffin is really, really good at offensive scheming. That's a big boost for Ole Miss. Now, on the other side, Nick Saban, I'm sure, has been harping on this team really hard and making sure that they take it seriously. They have probably been talking about that game last year and how close it was a ton, and how they cannot let that happen again. So I think Nick Saban is going to have this Alabama team prepared, as far as they are not going to be taking Ole Miss lightly. They played a nobody in Southern Miss last week. I'm sure they did most of their game prep for Ole Miss. Ole Miss has a lot more expected of them this year as well. They are not a nobody team that brand new coach that people aren't really thinking is going to be able to get anything done. Ole Miss is a highly ranked team that people are expecting to compete in the SEC West this year. I think the Bama preparation and being a home game for Alabama makes the difference here. So my prediction, my thought on this game is Ole Miss is going to have to be very aggressive on offense. And I think the result of that is either a really close game or a huge blowout for Alabama. And that's going to come down to a few, random plays. Ole Miss is going to be aggressive. Do those aggressive plays turn into turnovers or 3 and outs, or do they turn into explosive plays? That is the big question here. So I think this is either a game that's under a touchdown or a 3+ score win for Alabama. And I think that's why you see the spread where it is in this game. I don't really think a 2-touchdown difference is very likely. I think either Ole Miss is able to keep it a lot closer than that, or them trying to be aggressive makes the game fall apart and Bama wins easy. I'm going to take Alabama minus the 14.5 here. I think being at Alabama, I think Nick Saban having his team prepared for this game makes the difference. But again, I think this game is a coin flip as far as whether it's a close game or a blowout. I don't think it's going to be a 2-touchdown game, but I literally think it's a 50-50 chance that it's either a 3-point game or a 21-point game. And I think it's going to end up being a blowout, but this game and the Arkansas game, I could very easily flip my picks and say that the Georgia game is going to be a blowout, and this is going to be a super close game. Um, I really really don't know where to go on these. I'm picking them in opposite directions. I think one of these games is a blowout and the other one's a close game, and I don't really know which one it is. I have Arkansas game to be picked to be a closer game, but really I'm 50-50 on which one of these games I think is going to be the blowout, and I would not be surprised either way uh, on these games. Okay, last up, Auburn at LSU. LSU, a 4-point favorite, coming off a decent win against Mississippi State. I know I've seen a lot of people talk about how good LSU looked in that game. I don't think LSU looked great. Um, I mean, they got the win. Uh, it was a good win for them. It was an important win. It was a road SEC win, which is hard to get. But I didn't think LSU looked amazing in that game. Now, Auburn hasn't won at LSU since 1999, and they looked absolutely terrible at home against a mid-level G5 team last week. Um, Now, if you watched that game, if you didn't pick up on it, go back and watch some highlights. Auburn ran the ball against 9 and 10 man fronts, 9 or 10 people in the box by Georgia State, and Auburn ran the football. That that is never going to work against any team. You could be playing against an FCS team, and that's not going to work. Um, I don't know whose responsibility that was. If the quarterback is given the option in this offense of checking out of those plays, but that's not something you can do. Uh, and I don't know whose fault it is that they were doing that, if it's the coach's fault, if it was Bo Nix's fault when he was in there, but that's the unacceptable thing. You have to be able to identify that and check into a pass play in those situations. I think Georgia State there showed how you beat this Auburn team. You stack the box, you make it so they can't run, and you force Auburn to beat you in the air because Auburn is struggling at quarterback and especially at wide receiver right now. Those are two groups that have not played well, and you make those two groups put the game on their backs and get the win. And I don't know if Auburn can do it. Um, so on the LSU side, LSU has not been able to run the ball well. Their offensive line has not looked good, but they've looked really good on the defensive line and the speed at the linebacker position, getting pressure on the quarterback. They are leading the SEC in sacks. That's a big benefit to them in this game. Auburn, their O-line has played okay, but it's still not great. It's been an issue for a few years. If LSU shuts down the run game, I think they've got a good chance of being able to affect the passer. I don't think Auburn has a bunch of opportunities for deep balls in this game because of that. I think Auburn's success is going to have to come in the short passing game, forcing LSU to get out of the box and then being able to run the ball. So Auburn's defense also has generally been better against the run than the pass for the most part this season, and that does not play well against a team like LSU that really hasn't been able to run the ball well. So it doesn't matter that you're better against the run because LSU isn't good at it. Can LSU pick you apart through the air? I think that's a legitimate concern for Auburn in this game. And then who does Auburn start at quarterback? They pulled Bo Nix in the third quarter, and TJ Finley, LSU's quarterback last year in the Auburn LSU game, came in and led the game-winning drive for Auburn in that game. I personally think Bo Nix probably gets the start in this game still. A lot of people think that Finley is going to be the starter. I just don't really believe that. I don't know if it makes a huge difference. I do think the team definitely looked more energized with TJ Finley in there. I think that's something to consider. I would not be surprised if we end up seeing both quarterbacks, regardless of who starts. I think if you see someone go in there and whoever starts, if they struggle at all, I think you're going to see the other person come in. I really don't know. There were also some questions as to whether or not Bo Nix was hurt. So it appeared he injured his throwing shoulder in the Penn State game. There were some people who think that's the real reason he got pulled in that game because it was affecting his accuracy. I really don't know if that's the case or if they were just looking for a change, and that's what Brian Harsin said after the game is they had swapped everything else around. They weren't going to change out the O-line, so quarterback was the only other thing to try to change to get the win there. And they got the win, so I mean that's the important thing. It is nice to see that he is willing to make those kinds of decisions in a game and pull someone who is struggling and put the other person in and see how it goes. I think Auburn is going to need to get some stops and put pressure on LSU's quarterback to get a win here. Again, I don't really trust Auburn in this game. With the huge road losing streak at LSU, it's a late night game. It's going to be a tough environment to play in. I really, really don't know if I can see Auburn getting the win here. I'm going to hope, as an Auburn fan, that this is a close game. I don't think they can get the win. I'm hoping that it's a 3-point game with LSU being a 4-point favorite here. I'm going to take Auburn plus the 4 points. Now, I'm going to say a little asterisk on that pick. I am a huge Auburn fan. This is probably me being a homer. I am not confident in this pick at all. I would not be surprised if LSU wins by a touchdown or more in this game, but I'm going to take Auburn plus the 4 points. So that's the games I'm covering this week. Let me know in the comments if you think I'm wrong on any of these, or if there's any game I didn't talk about you want to hear my opinion on. And otherwise, I'll see you next time.